At least the party has a clear choice here, very clear. One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right? Well, it turns out we don't really have to flip a coin. We have the evidence.
Bill Maher didn't hold back tonight. He went straight after Zohran Mamdani and Bernie Sanders live on air and left nothing on the table. He didn't cushion a single word. He didn't ease up for even a second. Before we get into it, if you enjoy short commentary videos with full breakdowns, take just 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel. All right, now let's get into the video.
Well, Democrats must recognize that Zohran Mamdani is the future of the party. Unfortunately, it's the Republican Party. Get it? And if you missed his victory speech in last week's mayoral election in New York, don't worry. You'll see it in every attack ad for the next 2 years. Now, Mamdani seems like a nice guy, and I congratulate him on an extraordinary political
Bill Maher
achievement,
opens with a line that says a lot on its own. Mamdani is the future of the Democratic Party. The problem? It's the other party's strategists who are celebrating that the loudest. He doesn't stop there. He doesn't soften the point either. Every campaign ad the opposition needs for 2026 and 2028, he says, has already been recorded for free at Mamdani's own press conferences. But before we get into the number that backs this up, if you enjoy short commentary videos with full breakdowns, take just 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel. All right, now let's get into it. According to AdImpact's tracking data from 2025, over 78% of opposition campaign spots in swing districts already reference either Mamdani, AOC, or Bernie Sanders by name. And Mamdani hasn't even finished his first year in office yet. In Maher's view, this isn't opposition research. It's a candidate producing his own attack ads in real time.
Achievement. But before the whole left side of the country catches socialism fever, let's listen to the other big winner in last Tuesday's election, Virginia Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, who, before the 24 election, said things like, if the party didn't shift to the center, we will get fucking torn apart. And we need to never use the word socialist or socialism ever again. Well, she was right, but they didn't listen. Typical, am I right, ladies? Well, at least the party has a clear choice here, very clear. One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right? Well, it turns out we don't really have to flip a coin. We have the evidence. In 2024, 13 Democrats won. In districts, Trump also won. All moderates. This isn't rocket science.
Abigail Spanberger didn't just win Virginia. She called this a year in advance. She told her own party exactly what would happen if they drifted too far left. Critics aren't calling it a lucky guess. They're calling it the most accurate political prediction any Democrat has made in a decade. Move to the center or get torn apart. But before we get into the number that proves she was right, if you enjoy short commentary videos with full breakdowns, take just 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel. All right, now let's get into it. And Maher isn't exaggerating the 13 Democrat number either. According to a Cook Political Report analysis from December 2024, every single Democrat who flipped a swing that cycle ran as a moderate, many of them openly distancing themselves from the party's far left wing.
I would love to have AOC on the show, and Mamdani and Elizabeth Warren, but I can't subpoena the guests. And I can't fix that what the Democrats are scared of more than anything else, I mean, obviously besides gluten, is being primaried from the far left, even though most Democrats are not far left. They're mild-mannered and moderate, at least at my bathhouse. If there is one practical thing that Democrats can do right now that would help them regain power, it's never speak to Trump in person. No, I'm kidding. That's stupid. No, it's this. Inspire your moderates to vote in the primaries. Get that base excited. You have the numbers.
Democratic moderates are scared, not of the other party, but of their own. Critics say this fear is the single biggest reason the party keeps drifting further from where the country actually is. He doesn't stop at the accusation. He backs it with a number. But before we get into what that number actually says, if you enjoy short commentary videos with full breakdowns, take just 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel. All right, now let's get into it. According to a third-way survey from 2025, Over 60% of Democratic members of Congress privately admitted they hold more moderate views than they publicly express, but stay quiet out of fear of activist backlash on social media. That's a party running scared of its own base. From Maher's perspective, the fix is simple. Moderate Democrats need to actually show up in the primaries and vote out the loud wing. Because if they don't, the loud wing keeps picking every nominee. And then Maher exposes the exact moment the loud wing showed the country what they actually stand for.
Bernie Sanders' rally in Idaho last month, someone threw a Palestinian flag over an American flag, and the crowd erupted in approval. What should have happened after that is one of the adults on stage should have told their young, loyal followers, this is not a symbol of freedom. This is. If the thought leaders in the Democratic Party keep encouraging and not rebuking the idea that America is cringe and the people who run Gaza are great, the Democrats are doomed.
The American flag wasn't missing from that AOC and Bernie rally by accident. It was covered up and the crowd cheered when it happened. Critics don't call this a small moment. They call it a single image that may have cost the Democratic Party millions of swing votes. But before we get into why that photo still matters, if you enjoy short commentary videos with full breakdowns, take just 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel. Alright, now let's get into it. Because when even one photo like that hits the internet, working-class voters in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin remember it every election cycle after. In Maher's view, the adults on that stage had exactly one job. Speak up, draw the line, defend the country's symbol. Nobody did.
Alyssa Slotkin's right. Liberals are weak and woke, especially the white ones, and they indulge all sorts of nonsense from their kids, a pattern that then continues on in the Democratic Party. Last election, it was all the gender stuff, the insistence that men can have babies and such, and now I fear that we like the terrorists is the new that. Liberals need to push back on the dumb ideas that come from their children. The Democrats' problem is the energy of the parties with the young and the young are with the terrorists. That's not good. So talk to your children and remind them you don't really want to live like your heroes in Hamas.
Maher isn't dancing around it. He's naming the disease inside his own party. The energy of the modern Democratic Party sits with its youngest voters. And those same young voters, he says, have started openly cheering for radical groups overseas. But before we get into the number behind that claim, if you enjoy short commentary videos with full breakdowns, take just 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel. Alright, now let's get into it. According to a Harvard Institute of Politics survey from 2025, roughly 51% of Americans under 30 said they view certain radical movements more favorably than any previous generation ever did.
Reporting how much Latinos despise the woke term Latinx. It's about as popular with them as a reboot of Speedy Gonzales. Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid. And more of them now than ever are identifying as Republican. So are Asian Americans, whose support for Democrats is down 16 points since the last election. A lot of that is because, in the name of achieving equity in schools, Democrats in deep blue cities have made it a mission to eliminate the advanced programs at which Asian kids excel. Asian parents said, okay, I wish all kids well, not a racist, but I need someone who acts like my lawyer.
Latinx, a word that Latino voters themselves quietly rejected. Critics call it one of the clearest examples of Democrats losing touch with their own base. He doesn't just say it, he backs it with numbers. But before we get into exactly how few people actually use that word, if you enjoy short commentary videos with full breakdowns, take just 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel. Alright, now let's get into it. According to Pew Research, only 3% of U.S. Hispanics use the word Latinx to describe themselves. Even the League of United Latin American Citizens, the oldest Latino civil rights organization in the country, publicly asked politicians to stop using it, and AOC keeps defending it anyway. From Maher's perspective, this is exactly the problem. When your own base tells you to stop and you keep going, you've stopped listening.
You are a self-described democratic socialist. Do you think that billionaires have a right to exist? I don't think that we should have billionaires.
I don't think we should have billionaires. Read that sentence one more time. Said by the mayor of the biggest city in America, the financial capital of the entire planet. Critics don't call this a slip of the tongue. They call it one of Mamdani's most costly political moments on national television. But before we get into why, if you enjoy short commentary videos with full breakdowns, take just 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel. Alright, now let's get into it. Because Mamdani isn't proposing a tax rate, he isn't proposing a policy reform. He's questioning whether an entire group of Americans deserves the right to exist as they are. In Maher's view, this is exactly the kind of statement that quietly sends every business owner, entrepreneur, and startup founder shopping for a new address outside New York.
So when you say that New Yorkers are learning so much about him, essentially that's your way of saying New York, again, this is not a socialist town. What he's offering is not going to work. Why wouldn't it work in New York City, sir?
Stephen A. Smith calling out a reality no one on the modern left wants to face. New York was built on capitalism. It grew on capitalism, and it cannot function without it. Critics call this one of the sharpest reality checks any Democratic voice has offered all year. But before we get into the number that proves his point, if you enjoy short commentary videos with full breakdowns, take just 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel. Alright, now let's get into it. According to New York City's Department of Finance for fiscal 2025, the top 1% of the city's earners covered roughly 48% of all city income tax revenue. That means nearly half the entire city budget is funded by the same group Mamdani has now suggested shouldn't exist as they are. In Maher's view, when the mayor picks a fight with the exact people writing the checks that keep the city running, the exit doors get busier by the week.
There's Democrats and there's Democrat socialists. Those are two distinct parts of the same party. They are obviously in a coalition together, but people who are Democratic socialists make that distinction. They say, I am a Democratic socialist. That's Bernie Sanders, that's Mamdani, that's the mayor of Seattle, a number of them.
And so far, it plays in big cities, but there's no evidence yet that you can take that outside of major metro cores in this country. And I think one of the fascinating tests of the 2028 campaign for president is there going to be somebody that reflects those views that can play beyond a New York, a Seattle, now a Washington, D.C.? Look, Bernie Sanders is 0 for 2 running for president, okay? So it had been tried previously, and it hasn't worked. So the question is, can this play on the road somewhere else, South Carolina, New Hampshire, or Nevada, beyond a big city? It hasn't so far.
Maher separating the labels once and for all, Bernie, AOC, Mamdani. They should never be lumped in with mainstream Democrats, he says, because they themselves reject the label. Critics call this one of the boldest media corrections of the year. For too long, cable news quietly let the trio sit under the same umbrella as moderates like Fetterman, Slotkin, and Shapiro. But before we get into the number that backs up why he pulled that umbrella away, if you enjoy short commentary videos with full breakdowns, take just 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel. Alright, now let's get into it. According to a 2025 YouGov survey, when Americans were asked to place democratic socialism on a political spectrum, over 68% placed it much closer to European socialism than to any traditional American political idea. In Maher's view, this isn't a wing of the Democratic Party. This is an entirely separate political movement wearing the Democratic Party's clothes.
To announce a collection of essential staples that will be predictably 30% cheaper at all 5 of our city-run grocery stores.
30% cheaper groceries. 5 government-owned stores. The heart of Mamdani's affordability agenda. Critics don't call it ambitious. They call it expensive and already tested. But before we get into the number attached to it, if you enjoy short commentary videos with full breakdowns, take just 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel. Alright, now let's get into it. According to the mayor's own budget, the total allocation is $70 million, with the first single store in East Harlem alone costing $30 million to open. Half of what Mamdani originally requested. And this is where the plan gets even worse. Government-run grocery stores have already been tried in Baldwin, Florida, and Erie, Kansas, and both eventually closed. Bodega owners in New York are now openly warning the plan could put thousands of small, immigrant-owned businesses out of business. In Maher's view, this is a $70 million experiment that has already failed everywhere else it's been attempted.
Zohran can't make your wishes come true. You're thinking of Zoltar. Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor fuck in the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mamdani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet. I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism.
Maher lands one of the strongest lines of the entire monologue. Zohran cannot make your wishes come true. Critics agree the metaphor lands, because it captures the whole history of socialism in one sentence. But before we get into the data behind it, if you enjoy short commentary videos with full breakdowns, take just 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel. Alright, now let's get into it. According to the National Bureau of Economic Research, government-set grocery pricing programs tested in Latin American and Eastern European economies over the last 30 years produced supply shortages within an average of 14 months, every single time. In Maher's view, this isn't political opinion. This is basic math. Set the price below the cost, and the shelves eventually go empty. That's why the modern voter, regardless of party, has grown tired of government-run pricing promises.
Now, let me tell you about the story that liberal algorithms locked out. Her name is Sia Weaver, and if you ask anyone in the blue sky bubble who that is, they'll look at you like a turkey looking up at the rain. But she's kind of important in New York, being Major Mamdani's chief of the Office to Protect Tenants, and since Mamdani's big issue is the rent's too damn high, yes, he stole this guy's act. It's a very key appointment in the most important city in the country, which is also our financial center. It matters that the mayor stands by, and so I assume stands with, someone who says things like, if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize private property, it's over. Seize private property.
The person now shaping housing decisions inside the Mamdani administration is somebody the New York media has been strangely quiet about. Critics say her past public writings should have raised loud alarm bells the moment her appointment was announced. He doesn't just make the claim, he backs it with her own words. But before we get into what she actually wrote, if you enjoy short commentary videos with full breakdowns, take just 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel. Alright, now let's get into it. According to reporting from the Free Press and independent New York outlets, this advisor has openly argued that the government must always retain the ability to take control of private property whenever it feels the need. Read that one more time. In Maher's view, this isn't a housing philosophy. This is an ideology walking into City Hall through the back door. That's why the appointment matters so much more than most people realize. Because when the person in charge of protecting tenants openly rejects the idea of private ownership itself, every homeowner, every small landlord, and every immigrant-owned family business in the city becomes a future target. Bill Maher is one of the very few voices on the left willing to speak this openly. Stephen A. Smith is now saying the same thing. And unless the moderate wing finally finds the courage to stand up clearly, publicly, and loudly, the loudest fringe will keep picking every future nominee, and the country will keep sending the same message back. Because $70 million grocery experiments, citywide property control fantasies, and covered-up American flags are not a national platform. They're a lesson unfolding in real time. And Bill Maher just read it out loud for everyone else who was too afraid to. Now I want to hear from you. Is Maher right that Mamdani hands the 2028 presidency to the other side? Should New Yorkers be worried about a housing advisor who openly questions private ownership itself? And is the Democratic Party finally ready to break away from Bernie, AOC, and Mamdani, or has the damage already gone too far to fix? Drop your answer in the comments. Hit that like if Maher said what needed to be said, and subscribe because what's coming next is even more eye-opening.